Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Undeniably, there is a growing geopolitical imbalance in Indo-Pacific region, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. There's a danger of them being converted into undeclared war zones with the navies of the world patrolling. And we do need a change in the priorities. We do need new diplomatic inputs to solve these imbalances. And what better way than having Indian samosas baked by Australian Prime Minister and Indian Prime Minister may be offering tea. Of course, it did offer khichdi, but tea and samosa, tea the hallmark of the Indian Prime Minister, samosa freshly baked by Scott Morrison. And that was a virtual meeting, possibly the first virtual meeting held in the world between two heads of state. And the decision was good. It was what it should have been that the both countries would be entitled to use the other country's place for military operations. Actually, it's not a no defense pact, but it's a mutual use of each other's facilities. Now, let's not forget that India has been preoccupied with perennial challenges in the neighbor, whether it's in north with China or in the west with Pakistan, or sometimes a bit in the south, not much, but sometimes. India has missed out accordingly on the opportunities for productive partnership with the middle powers. And it's the middle powers now which are becoming the frontal powers. So this meeting, the virtual meeting between Scott Morrison of Samosa fame with Indian Prime Minister Modi is an important part of New Delhi's current diplomatic effort to plug the big gap in Indian diplomatic traditions. And as a matter of fact, what is amazing is that the two prime ministers are meeting, and that too a virtual meeting, after more than 40 years. The last meeting between the Indian Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister was when Rajiv had gone and met the Australian Prime Minister. And a few countries have underestimated India as Australia. This is amazing. Take the simplest example. With a GDP of more than 1.4 trillion, that's the GDP of Australia, and is the 13th largest economy in the world, just behind Russia, where the Russian economy is 1.6 trillion. It's rich in the natural resources that Indian growing economy needs. It has huge reserves of higher education, scientific and technical education. And yet, our relations with Australia are not of that level what it should have been in the global diplomatic arena. Australia has more punch than it should have. Its weight is less, but punch is more. Its armed forces, hardened by the international combat, are widely respected. The intelligence service of Canberra cannot compete with Mossad or CIA, but is no less. Australia has deep economic, political, and security connections with Asia and strategic partnership with one of the leading non-aligned partners, Indonesia. Canberra has a sphere of its own, the South Pacific. And now here comes the identity. India has threat from Chinese penetration in Ladakh, in Nifa, Aksai Chin, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh. And in ocean, the whole our coast is being threatened because they're having base in Gadava and in Sri Lanka. And China has posed the same threat in South Pacific to Australia. So these strengths of Australia believe, or rather made, first Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru believe that Australia was a natural part of Asia, not a separate continent. So he invited Australia in 1947 to Asian Relations Conference. That was just a few months before the independence. But the political dust up was never followed up. The rest of the 20th century after 47, there was a policy of drift and alienation as far as Australia is concerned. And the situation worsened in 1998 when India exploded its bomb, tested its bomb in Pokhara. But after 2000, Canberra has been trying its level best to improve relationship with India and resolve the nuclear differences. But then ultimately Rajiv visited in 1986 and Modi visited in 2014. 30 years gap. And that shows the short-sighted, myopic attitude of India towards Australia. It's exactly in these years that the China transformed its relationship with Australia. Can you believe it? We are withdrawing, China has advanced. And Delhi's temptation to judge nations on the basis of their alignment with other powers is in clear contrast to Beijing that puts interest above ideology. They don't care for ideology. They promote interdependence with targeted middle powers, turn into political influence, and try to weaken its alignment with the rival powers. Look what they did with Pakistan. Pakistan relationship so close to USA have been weakened and thanks to China. But then now there is a political will in Delhi to liberate its diplomacy from ideological prejudices. And Australian movement appears to be at hand. And there is one major benefit going to be there. India has 700,000 people of Indian origin, 700,000 Indian diaspora in Australia. It's the fastest growing group in Australia, and it can be a very positive factor in bilateral relationship. Then India and Australia have common membership in Commonwealth, G20, East Asia Summit, IORA, and most importantly, if you remember, I had talked of Quad, the quadrilateral. A Quad is Australia, Japan, India, and Israel, Australia, Japan, India, and South Africa. So these two Quads form the crux of the future diplomacy. And the current downturn in the global economy certainly limits the immediate possibilities of full potential of commercial relations. But I'm not talking about commercial relations. I'm talking of much more than commercial relations. Let the commercial relations be the result of closer diplomatic ties. There are a host of emerging issues which need to be tackled. India has its own priorities, and they're not much different from the Australian priorities. And that is why yesterday, or rather today, when the meeting between Scott Morrison and Narendra Modi took place, there was banter, there was bonhomie, friendship, offering of samosas and offering of khichdi, and a reference to the famous or infamous hug of Modi. And the emerging issues were referred to, not discussed, but definitely there will be followed up. There is the need to reform WHO. There is a need to counter 5G technology, strengthening international solar alliance, building resilience against climate change and natural disasters. If Australia has been able to manage the scourge of locusts and convert its land into one of the most productive agricultural lands, why can't India and Australia collaborate to mitigate hunger in the world? And all these issues lend themselves to constant, intensive bilateral political and institutional engagement. Then the geopolitical churning of the Indo-Pacific region. It's like Shiva churning the ocean and bringing out 14 well-meaning products. We need to churn the Indo-Pacific region. And once you do it, there's a massive space for consequential security cooperation between India and Australia. Now, one thing is clear that the mandarins in New Delhi now are comparatively more open, more receptive, and more intelligent. And they agree, the strategic group of the bureaucrats, the policy formulators, they know that they cannot rely on the old formula for securing their interests. And that is thanks to the growing Chinese assertiveness coupled with US political trajectory. USA is withdrawing. China is going ahead. And you have got to ensure that the China's aggressiveness and assertiveness is not nationally harmful. And then you need to protect yourself with building a bulwark. And what better bulwark than the Quad, which can present a solid flanks to oppose China. Over the last few years, defense engagement between the two countries has grown and now is capped by the military logistics port agreement. That agreement, I think, is the finest piece of agreement that Modi has signed till date because it opens an absolutely new vistas. We are yet to watch the reaction from China. But then I think the government is now clear that they are not going to have a bout of cold because China is sneezing. However, there's a need for Modi and Morrison, the two M's, to raise the level of ambition, scale up the security challenge in the Pacific because just incremental steps are not sufficient. You need more intensive and more extensive action. The two leaders must, and I repeat, must order their security and establishments to develop strategic coordination in the various sub-regions of the Pacific littoral and rather Indo-Pacific littoral. These littoral states, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it's Myanmar, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Philippines, South Korea, Japan, Fiji, Nauru, these little states have to be made calm and assured that their independence, their integrity, their safety would be safeguarded and nobody would be allowed to penetrate them. That is important. The eastern Indian Ocean that lies between the shores of peninsular India and the west coast of Australia has to be the top priority. So, this region, the eastern coast of India, peninsular India, and the west coast of Australia, the whole ocean between that has to be jointly patrolled and protected. Eastern Indian Ocean connecting the two oceans, Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, is the heart of the Indo-Pacific. This is where Delhi and Canberra can initiate a full range of joint activities, and that should include maritime domain awareness, development of strategically located islands, and marine scientific research. And then the sea lines of communication between India and the Pacific run through Indonesian archipelago. So Indonesia is another important country you can't ignore in that quad. Given the shared political commitment to the Indo-Pacific idea between India, Jakarta, and Canberra, there has to be growing pressure on them to secure their shared watch. So Modi and Morrison must seek trilateral maritime and naval cooperation with Indonesia. But then that's not enough. You need to present as natural partners another country, Japan, France, and Britain. Tokyo has close ties with Delhi and Canberra. So the trilateral dialogue can be expanded from diplomatic to practical maritime cooperation. And then France cannot be ignored. It's the resident power in the territory in the West Indian Ocean and the South Pacific. And luckily, both Paris and Canberra are eager to develop a trilateral arrangement with Delhi to supplement the bilateral relationship that those two have too. So Modi must endorse the initiative. Finally, role of England cannot be denied. England continues to lead the five nation called the Five Power Defense Agreement (FPDA) that was signed way back in 1971. That was immediately after the Suez War. But that brings together the forces of England, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand. So why should India not be a part of FPDA? There can be a possibility of engagement in the two. And by building the series of overlapping bilateral platforms for regional security, India and Canberra can stop the danger of growing geopolitical imbalance. And that's most important. The imbalance in geopolitical region can only be stopped by a close relationship between the two. And these series of overlapping bilateral and minilateral platforms in regional cooperation would see the danger from China minimized and India blooming forth as a world power. Nice to know that tea and samosa can really bring a change. Let's see. Thank you.